about creativity, yo.
On air creativity, yo.
I don't know if we've done that. Oh, we're live.
Yeah,
I thought we were still on the on-ramp.
No. The whole time you're prepping me, I hit start broadcast.
Did you even get the part me saying that there's something I don't want to talk about on tape, but I'm talking about it afterwards? Did you? Did you?
No, I didn't get that.
Now it is though. Now it is.
What I got was creativity, yo. That's where we were broadcasting live, and now you're backtracking. You're going back into. It's like
I'm revealing the thing I didn't want to reveal.
It's like one of your kids is down there and they just hit you in the head, and now you're talking about everything you're not supposed to talk about on air.
I know. I love it. Yeah, I love those inadvertent blurts. Like I don't know if it happens to you when you have sometimes friends over, and then you get to know the friends, and then just the kids end up coming over. Like they're the ones. I like it. What are you pointing to? Your serum.
My serum.
And the serum clear.
Nice serum clear. I like it. I've got like blood red serum today.
That happens.
I'm feeling like I'm feeling it. Like, wow, I just looked at it and I can see the bubbles in it, and it looks like Jello at the moment. You know how Jello, when it sits and it's got stuff embedded in it? That's what it looks like. Okay. I totally derailed where you were
going.
No,
cool. That's cool. I was thinking of those funny moments where my kids will have other kids over for play dates. I hate calling them play dates. I'm really trying to break my language of that. I like it better when you just went and called on someone, you go out and you play. So they have friends over that are playing, and somebody else's kids they kind of like spewing the secrets, the family secrets. So they're talking about how this isn't like how we do at our house, or they reveal how it is at their house, the stuff that you don't get to see. Like my son's bad for that. My son will just we actually have a process in the house when we're fooling around as a family, making jokes, or, someone in the house is like doing something gross, like a burp or a fart. And we'll sometimes frame it like, okay, this is family fun, right? Like we just, this is just the family. It's only for the family. And you're trying to preempt the possibility of them going over to someone else's house and being ridiculous in a way. I don't know. It's so like the fear of shame as a parent. Like it's kind of that funny thing, but it's just that whole blurt factor. So what I felt like I did at the front end, I'm sort of revealing the thing that I wasn't going to talk about because I thought it was in the other house. I thought it was in the on-ramp. I don't think I didn't swear, so that's good. That's a good thing.
The blurting is so bad.
Yeah, blurting.
Hey, I just thought of, speaking of creativity.
Yeah.
I just thought of a great way to get sponsorship. You know how we don't have guests on our show, but people want to come on our show?
Yeah.
So I just figured it out. You pay us and we'll drop your name somewhere in the show. And then let's start with now nobody's made any agreements with me, but my vice principal, her name is Mrs. McDonald. There's $10 right there, buddy.
I don't think it would ever fly. I don't think it would ever fly. I think we should start more simply with the actually, let's go in a different route first. So let's I mean, part of it is we've talked about at length about guests. We've talked about what this space, this kind of conversation, what it kind of represents. I don't think we haven't put in a lot of I don't think we've put a lot of kind of storyboarding into where the conversations could go. But I think one of the things that we've really, I don't know if it's the word, kind of nurtured or just kind of protected is the sort of like the dedication to the talk. It's sort of like the focus on just being able to kind of land at a place at the end of the week. I think that the irony in this, the sort of the weirdness, is that we're doing it in public. So on one hand, anybody that would ever ask to be a part of the show, like, kudos. Like, that's awesome. Like, I get it. It's not as if we're not hiding our conversation. So anybody that would ever want to say, you know, I'd love to come on and chat with you fellas, kind of lands in a couple different spaces with me. One, I take it as a compliment because there's something that's been made, either the idea of talking with us, one of us, both of us, or talking just in general. Like, for some people, this is still a new fluency. Like, the idea of actually being on a podcast per se, or being on sort of like in a live reflective moment, can still be very new for people. I actually connected with 2 people this week that said, yeah, you know, I really should start developing a reflective practice, which was kind of like, I was kind of mind blown. Like, I kind of exist in this space like everybody does something like this, but I guess they don't. And I've also met enough people, you know, by doing this podcast, other podcasts, that kind of have never ever thought like they could talk in public, or talk in a way where their conversation would be curated so that you could actually return to it. Let alone if you're journaling, or you're podcasting, or you create art, you do something in response to the conversations that you're having. So I'm still, even this past week, and in this moment where, you know, we're saying we don't do guests, it's funny to sort of create that kind of exclusive bubble, because I get it. I can get how that can seem, on one hand, like we're pushing people, like we're not interested, or we're pushing people away. I think it's a funny balance between protecting what we're already doing, and if anybody, you know, was sort of, you know, if someone were to ask and say, you know, can I come on, I think I would be more apt to say, I would love to help you find your own practice. Like, I would love to help you find your space to do something. Because there's something kind of cool to just meeting up. But I could totally get, like, even as I'm walking this through, and if someone happened to be up at 8 a.m. on a Saturday morning and listening, because of the nature of our social media world, there's that conviction of connectivity where you believe that, you know, we have automatic access to everything that we need. You talk about sort of the sponsorship part. Yeah, I mean, we could drop plugs. We could drop plugs for different people. That would be interesting.
Or we could just go back to the book. We could try to sell the book for money.
We could.
Didn't I already? I mean, I know I've said several times we're going to give it away for free, and you've said it too, but maybe we should keep trying to make money from the book that's not yet written.
I don't even know how to set up that money model anymore. I feel like we've completely, we're so diversified in nothing that we're doing. That's a really, I like to use the word kaleidoscopic.
Oh,
yeah, nice. Kaleidoscopic. Yeah, it's a little kaleidoscopic.
I wrote down creativity, but we haven't really spoken about it. Should we?
We could come back to that, because I think there's something. Would you consider? So let's start with this, and this also sort of answers maybe the question. Answers part of the question as to why we don't do guests. It's gonna touch on both. Let me see if I can lead this one off. I find it really okay. So I'll accept that I'm a creative person. So if someone were to say to me, Clough, you're creative, I'm like, okay, thank you. And I take it just as I don't know how they're measuring it. I don't know what they're using to sort of like put that badge, right? On the inside, I think if I were reflecting on what creativity means to me, is just kind of like a really, really simple question. Can I shift between modes of understanding in some way? And what I mean by that is, can I move from reading to thinking about a song, and then thinking about that song and having a memory from my childhood, and then in that memory of my childhood, can I reminisce about some food that somebody made? So it's like, for me, creativity exists in the transition between ideas and thoughts. What I do in that transition And so here's where I produce. What I do in that transition could be the sketch notes that I do for our podcast each week. So it's kind of like, what is the thing, what is the action that happens as a result of me transitioning between ideas? Now, for me, and that could be measured as creativity because someone might look at what I'm doing. So it tends to be tends to result in a produced thing, like a thing that I'm actually holding or I've drawn. For me, this is my style. And someone inevitably would say, or has said, how do you do that? How do you produce a thing that's representative of these ideas? And that's a funnier part to answer. I'm not sure. I think that's where you have to start talking about skill and talent, as in how have you trained your brain to do things, let's say. And it's no different from someone, let's say, listening to music and feeling like they want to get on their skateboard, or driving in your car, and you start to think about organizing your bookshelf at home. Like, it's sort of, these are two, you had mentioned it before, the A to B. I think the creativity is in being able to get a glimpse of what happens in the transition between A and B. Where I'm kind of at, because I've gotten comfortable with just kind of accepting and letting this process in, is sometimes I get glimpses even before I start traveling between A and B. So as we start talking in the morning, we're not, on the on-ramp, we're not necessarily talking about bits, and we're not going anywhere specific, just kind of like, hey, how's the week kind of a thing. I'm already getting these little glimpses of what I could be doing when we actually start to talk. Does that make sense? So I start to kind of map out some pieces here. Here's the weird thing. Am I leading my art, or is my art leading me? And I've spoken to writers where I ask them, at some point, do your characters take on enough gravitas and momentum that you feel like they're kind of writing themselves, or do you still feel like you're in control? I would still say that's kind of like the A and B and what's happening right in the middle. And here's my final thought on the guests. Here, I'm going to wrap it around. It's taken me a long time and so 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, I'm not even sure how long I've known you now, but the nature of our relationship has grown such that I can include you in my creative process. And if we backtrack off of DeCodEd, we individually had our own closed system of creativity with our own personal podcasts. We've seen other people kind of jump in, and our colleagues have podcasts now, and they're all sort of creating their own, I'm going to say, their own kind of silos of creativity. Some of the podcasts that I observe out there, it's still a fairly closed loop, as in the interviewers leading the conversation, and you can see the format for the conversation. What you and I have here, I think, with our creative approach to doing this podcast, is I feel like I had to break down some barriers for me to allow you into my creative process, to sort of include you in that space, to allow you to sort of be between the A and the B space. And that kind of takes time. And I think that's why I'm kind of nurturing this space, because right now our conversations, you and the topics that are just kind of buzzing around us, are my muse. I don't feel the need to necessarily include, let's say, a third, a fourth, a fifth voice in this. And I think if I did, there would have to be a whole lot of on-ramping. You and I in this mode right here together in this particular type of podcast took 2.5 years to make. 3, actually, no. So we're finishing up our second season. So that'll be 2 years you and I are working on this podcast in particular. Mind-blowing. And I think you and I were 2 years before that ish. So that's part of the relationship of this creative endeavor. And that's part of why I'd say I would find it very difficult. I would be entirely aware of losing what I enjoy about this particular creative process by including a third person in, fourth person, whatever. But people could still tweet us. They could sort of chime in on YouTube, I guess. The link is live.
They could.
It's hard to. It's sorry. One last thing. It's hard not to talk about it. It's funny. It's hard. I feel like I do, and I don't want to exclude people. You know, apologize to anyone who has asked to come on the podcast, but I don't. Yeah, I don't. It's like I kind of like how we're rolling with what we're rolling.
I like what you did there with the creativity talk and the guest thing and the way that the two kind of mix. It's like, I don't know, it's like doing a science experiment and knowing what chemicals to mix. That's kind of what we do with the podcast. We're mixing chemicals. We kind of have a feeling of what the reaction is going to be. And sometimes we don't know what the reaction is going to be. But then to add in a whole other element, it's a wild card, right?
Yeah.
It's not part of the formula, which some would say, well, make it part of the formula. I get that. But this isn't one of those moments in time where we want to start doing that. And the whole talk of including and excluding, I get that. It's not, and to somebody else it might look like we're excluding people, but I don't see it that way at all. I see, what is the purpose of this podcast that you and I have? You know, why did it start? And it started as a journey. It started as a journey of two people who are teachers, who are parents, who are like doing their thing every day, and how those worlds collide, and the learning that comes from those things and the new things that grow from the work that we do. That's what this podcast is about. And again, I hate to bring it up, but it goes back to, you know, who listens to the podcast and why they listen to it. How does that change how we do what we do? And you and I have been pretty solid and consistent on the idea that we're doing this podcast. It's serving a purpose. And if it doesn't bring value to someone, then it's okay that they don't listen to it. Mm-hmm. You and I are not out there recruiting and dragging people in. We're not doing that. Now, you know, I'll say that sometimes I'll put together a short video about the podcast and I'll tweet it out. I think that's more for like, that's part of my creative process. And it'd be great if people listened and interacted, but let's face it, very, very few people interact with us about the podcast. And when they do, we're very appreciative. Mm-hmm. And it's come up several times. Schreffler will talk about it. He'll bring it up. You know, we've had like Alana King. Sorry, now I'm caught in that trap of trying to name everybody who's brought it to our attention. Our brewmaster, you know, my VP was talking about it the other day. So people listen. Stephen Hurley, Michael Leonard.
Matt Aldrich.
Suzanne Smart. Like people that I'm familiar with, you're familiar with. They listen, then, you know, it comes up, and that's cool. Like, that's part of the process. But it's not the part of the process that I think, I'm going to speak for myself. It's not part of the process that I'm chasing. I'm not chasing that. Mm-hmm. What I'm chasing is the magic, if you will, of sitting with you for an hour and a half on Saturday mornings, talking about different things that happen to us during the week, or just ideas that we've had while we're teaching or while we're parenting, and then working through them. And from those conversations, from those reflections, I know I've grown into a way more creative person, way more aware, way more reflective, which benefits me in the classroom, and it benefits me as a parent. So that's what I'm chasing.
Yeah. So here's a question. Here's the question, and this is so and I definitely, I want to talk about the creative pieces that you and I are sort of like our thought fuel, how we're getting sparked up by being in this space. Oh, it's a bad question. How aware of you, or how necessary is collaboration in your creative process?
Collaboration, how?
How about this? Sorry, bad way. Where in your creative process is collaboration a valuable resource? When are you looking to collaborate? So getting outside your head for that creativity. When do you do it when you are in your creative process?
Okay, so when it comes to this podcast, and I would say with confidence that I've allowed you into my head with respect to my creativity. Outside of that, I don't collaborate when it comes to I appreciate and value collaboration, but I don't appreciate it when it's thrust upon me. I don't appreciate it when I'm processing, and this is what keeps coming up. This is what keeps popping up right now as I think about this. Do you know how many times I've invited someone to participate in the process?
Creative process.
Collaboration.
Okay, so we'll start there. Okay.
Collaboration. Creative process is a lot easier because I see two sides to creative process. I see the thinking component, and then I see the action component. The thinking component, it's very easy to find people to jump in because you say, hey, I've got this idea. This is what I'm thinking. What are your thoughts? But then to actually put that into practice, to say, okay, at 1 o'clock today, I'm going to turn my phone on and I'm going to record this and I'm going to record this. Then I'm going to edit it. I'm going to add some music to it. I'm going to twist it this way so that the creative juices that are flowing become reality. That's when people are like, oh, 1 o'clock, yeah, I'm not available. And then that's when you start to bend over backwards and you try to include that person in the creative and collaborative process. And that's where roadblocks drop right in front of me. And then that's where my frustration is. Why am I including other people in this? Because now I'm stifled. And now, like, my vision is eroding. That's, for me, why I will step away from the collaboration when it's connected to creativity, because in my experience, 98% of the time, people don't jump in. They say they want to jump in and they want to be included, but then when you put out the invite and you start to bring them in, I feel like I'm now forcing them to do something they don't want to do. I feel like I'm nagging people to participate. And I'm going to sidestep here to the innovation and leadership thing that I'm doing as part of a group that I belong to. So I'm participating in this initiative, this PD, that was originally created for leaders in my system, principals and vice principals, perhaps consultants. And what they're doing is they're trying to get these leaders, formal leaders, to move in a more innovative way in their schools. They've opened it up this year to include non-administrators, but people that consider themselves innovators in the system or have been told, you're a leader in this area, can you join us, type of thing. So I'm part of that. And so what I've done is I've taken upon myself to look at where my interests are and what I feel I'm good at and try to bring it into people's classrooms. So 3D printing, and now we're moving into like VR and stuff, whatever, tech integration. And I've told you, and I've mentioned it, and what I'm doing is I'm vlogging my experiences so that I have artifacts of my thinking and my actions. And it started off talking to two teachers. One jumped in and one hasn't been seen since. And so I tried to go back and to incorporate that teacher, but for whatever reason, and don't get me wrong, I'm not downplaying their reasons, I just don't know what they are. For whatever reason, this person has not engaged. Now, it could have been that they were just entertaining me while I was talking to them about it, and it was that talk side of the creativity, right? The thinking, talking piece, not the action piece. Now that it's come to the action piece, they're not there. So in my brain, I was like, well, what do I do? Do I keep hounding them? For me, in my reality, in my world, the answer is no. I'm not hounding them. I'm not trying to sell them anything. If they don't want to be part of it, then that's cool. So I move on. And so what I've done is I have moved on, and I found other people and brought other people in. So it's very easy to talk about collaboration. It's very easy to talk about how, you know, all the benefits of it. But the bottom line is, in my experience, I've seen people, everybody's ready to jump into the talking piece, the thinking piece, because it's easy. You're standing there and you can give your opinion and provide your ideas. But then when it's actually time to do the work, people don't do the work. And it's with everything. It's with everything. I'm hearing people outside of education say the same thing. You know, somebody like Gary Vaynerchuk is giving away all his process, all his ideas, all his success. And he even has said several times on video in his vlogs and his reflections, 99% of the people aren't going to do anything with what I give them. I provide value. I give them the information, and 1% will take it and do something with it. That's the same with us. It's the same in education. It's the same with the innovation. 1% will pull the trigger and do something because it's worth something to them. And so you got me here, man. Like, this is a big one for me. This is a big one. And when I was younger and more naive, I would hound. I'm not hounding anybody. That's not my business. That's not what I'm here to do. And so, you know, it's the age old, somebody will see something I tweeted out, or somebody will come into the classroom and see me doing something with my kids. Like, I want to do that too. And for me, like, I smile and I tell them, great. When do you want to talk about it? I go through the motions knowing that 99% of my conversation with that person is dead as soon as they walk out of my classroom. And, you know, it sounds bad, but that is the reality. It is the reality, my reality. So there it is, man. Creativity, collaboration. With you, I know you'll pull the trigger. And even if you don't, I value your perspective and your opinion. Sometimes, you know this, I'll send you a video and I'll say, what do you think? And you'll provide me with your thoughts, with your next steps. And sometimes I use them and sometimes I don't. But I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate and I value your thoughts and your actionable items because I've seen you engage, right? So you and I, we've been pulling the trigger on this podcast for years, a year and a half. And we've both been going back and forth with different, like, it's easy to collaborate with you because I just know you're going to pull the trigger. And if you're not, you're going to tell me, yeah, I'm not buying this one. I'm like, okay. And then if it's worth something to me, I will keep running with it. And if it's not worth anything to me, I will put it down.
So then it brings me, okay, so then let's talk about refreshment then. So part of the, let's say, the creativity that, okay, actually I have to do this a couple different ways. It's interesting that I would say that I could be one of those people that you're talking about that kind of, you may ask and then I inadvertently ghost you. Like, I just kind of disappear. And I'm not saying in this particular project, because now we've established like repetition and connection and the hooks, we've got them kind of into each other. We're sort of, there's more layers than just, let's say, approaching each other professionally. Because I will say part of my absorptive process as far as taking in raw materials that are going to feed my creativity is that one of the things that I do is I will audit connections. And that's the best way I can kind of say it. Like right now, I'm on 3 committees at school. And in the past, I've never joined committee. Like, I'm not, apart from the ones that were kind of directly connected to, let's say, my context. So as a department head, there's certain committees, there's expectations for you to be connected to stuff. So I've joined equity, literacy. I'm part of the transitions committee at our school. And I've really had to open up myself to take a step beyond the auditing role and actually, like, I'm aware of that uncomfortable space of me committing to that larger, longer project of something. And, you know, we talked about on the on-ramp, we talked about the screaming butterfly, that whole metamorphosis kind of element. Like when you watch, throw down the example we're talking, you sort of watch that butterfly coming out of the cocoon. You know, it's mostly because we don't speak butterfly that we can't hear their swear words. Because I got to imagine that little son of a gun is just swearing up a storm. Like how uncomfortable is that to sort of come out of the cocoon? So I'm in that phase between, let's say, that butterfly and the larval space, but not like in any sort of comfort zone. Like I can feel myself, I can feel the discomfort of having to include a longer relationship in more spaces. But I could very well have been one of those people. I could still be one of those people that you would approach, or someone like you, and say, hey, I really kind of, I'm kind of doing this thing. I see you doing that thing. I think we could kind of do this cool thing together. And I may be kind of cool and go, okay, let's do a couple sessions together. And then I might just kind of, you know, like I said, kind of icy. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't think this is for me. I would tell you why, but I would walk away. Like I do walk away from collaborative endeavors. Maybe that's the upside. Maybe that's not what you're talking about, where people just totally disappear. I would probably tell you, I've gotten comfortable with telling people why it is I think it's not going to work out. But you got me thinking. That was the first part there. The second part I was thinking about is refreshment. So can I draw in what I was talking about PLNs before? So I'm really getting, okay, so my relationship with social media is complicated, as I hope everybody's is, to be honest. I hope it's a complicated thing. I hope that people, whether, no matter the platform that they're going to use, that they feel like they're making decisions for themselves, that they're confronted with challenges of using social media, that it doesn't become so automatic that the likes and retweets just happen. I like the idea of choice. I think existing in that space, though, has led me to follow some people, unfollow some people. It led me to taking a break from social media for a while. It's led me to sort of trying to build better relationships, like actually leveraging the human inside of social media. So you're, you know, kudos to Roy and Lee. You're still pinging around in my head, buddy. That idea of really, really constantly working to remember that there's someone on the other end of that post, no matter the number of following. So I like this dissonance with social media. One of the things that I'm starting to really scrutinize for myself is what I'm being fed with, and how often I'm being fed with the same thing. Now, I get there's a cool thing in teaching where we like to practice and repeat. My particular context, I'll draw it in working with students on the autism spectrum. Repetition is a large part of the kind of reinforcement and setting routine and expectations and kind of comfort zones to be able to kind of like get the learning in a sort of an actionable phase. So I have a lot of schedules, a lot of visual schedules, a lot of stuff that we do in repetition to sort of build that kind of like learning acumen, let's say. When I think about my social media feeds, though, and I think about what it is I'm craving, I'm starting to get bogged with this idea that there's certain individuals, hyper posters, that I can't escape. And it doesn't matter if I stop. The cost would be I would have to, and maybe I'm answering my own sort of like, I get it. I might be answering, here's the answer, Clef, just stop using social media. But I'm going to shift to where social media has become an interesting, if not influential, but it has become one of my resources for creativity. And I enjoy when I can find individuals. I've always enjoyed individuals that speak to kind of bespoke or niche areas of education. I've always enjoyed individuals that are talking about education, but not talking about education. I make the connections. I'm between the A and the B. I'm creating the thing. And it's my own thinking about these two sort of disparate pieces. But I've become really fascinated with the fact that I've actually tried to avoid, without completely getting rid of all of my followers, trying to avoid certain people because I'm just tired of what they're posting, and I can't do it. And it's a funny thing to feel like you're locked inside your PLN. I just had this sudden that I'm like, my God, I'm like locked inside this PLN. I can't escape this individual. And I'm just, I'd be curious if anyone else ever kind of felt that. I'm sure there's other people that take that. Sorry, I won't say I'm sure. I'm imagining that there's people that take comfort in the fact that when they see one of their close connections on a social media platform, like or repost something that they themselves liked or reposted, like they take some comfort, like, yes, that's cool. Someone else likes what I like. I understand that element of it. But if I'm trying to really leverage the quality of nutrients that I'm getting out of my PLN, man, sometimes I feel like I'm pulling from the compost bin. Like that's all that's in front of me. It's compost bin. And it's just stuff that's been sitting there. It's tired. It's stretched. It's just not, it doesn't, one area I've never heard anyone really pursuing, like, what's the rigor that you want from your social media feed? Like, what is the rigor, right? There's my rant. I don't know if all the thing and like I said, short of me pulling, like just salting my whole feed and thinking I'm pulling just a few select, and let's see what kind of blooms out of that. Totally carpet bombing it, just like, and let's see what kind of grows up out of that. Because I did that once before. I went to the extreme. Although it would be an interesting experiment, eh? Knock yourself down to, like, pick your number. 20 people only. 20 people. Knock your whole feed down to, pick your number, don't matter. But, like, knock your feed down to 20 people that you feel are the most interesting, most creative, most nutritious individuals in your feed. And then rebuild. I might do that. I might actually do that.
And you would.
You know what? Marie Kondo, cleaning up the tidying, the joy of tidying. I'm going to credit you. Greg McEwen, the essentialist. Oh, essentialism. There's a challenge. Knock your whole feed down to the 20 top, the 20. You let whoever you want follow you. That'd be tough. I think that's.
I guess you won't be following me anymore.
No, dude, no. 20. What would be your number? What would be your number?
I don't think I would pull the trigger on this. This is one of those things where you've got this wicked idea, and you're like, "Hey, what would you do?" And I'm like, "I wouldn't."
How many people do you follow?
I follow like short of 4 grand, I guess, or like. I follow 4,800 people.
Because you and I have talked about that. You've mentioned that. Like, you've said that too. That there's some people like I gotta clear them out.
Dude, I didn't know you were going to take this direction, because on the on ramp, you and I talked about this, and I talked about it. I think I talked about it in a kind of more of an extreme way, because and now that you brought it up, I'd love to jump in. I'd love to jump in by saying that I feel the same. I feel like I'm trapped. In some instances, I'm trapped in a PLN with certain people who it's causing me. It's layered, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's layered because I may know some of these people from in real life interactions, and I may know some of these people from just a digital interaction. And I feel like some of these people at the moment are making me feel a way that I don't want to feel. And I know I'm responsible for my own feelings.
Right. I was going to say, there's no woe is me in this. I love that you mentioned that. Yeah. Cause I'm not me throwing down like my 20 or whatever that, my 100, whatever that is. This isn't me I'm not offloading responsibility here, but it does make me wonder if there's other people, like, strategically, how do you trim your feed? Like, how do you get to that space? Do you have to go? Because the other side is you could actually go person by person and just unfollow people and just sort of admit to yourself that though, and I learned this from you and I still kind of accept this, someone follows you, you follow them. You are building a network. how strong is that network, right?
Right. Well, and I want to dig a little bit deeper
do
in
it.
that. Okay, so the way I feel, I know ultimately it's up to me to control. And I guess what I'm trying to say is a little bit more complicated. It can become complicated, and even if you go hard and you say, yeah, I'm just unfollowing people. The complication then comes from, they may contact you and say, hey, what's going on? I noticed that we're not connected anymore. And then that gets messy because feelings are going to be hurt. People are going to be upset. And if you don't care about that, then that's cool. But I'm not in the business of trying to upset people. And hey, I'm giving myself way too much credit. I'm sure I could unfollow a ton of people and they wouldn't even notice.
That was a little bit of my laugh. I'm like, I think this is part of even the most balanced individuals like yourself. It's the part of the ego that you unfollowing somebody would matter. And that someone would notice. I think there's a really interesting, I like to go evidence based on that.
Do you see though how it gets messy even within your own mind?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
You're sitting on the other end. You're like, yeah, that doesn't sound messy. But in my mind, there's lots of layers. There's lots of things to consider in my mind. So,
my mom, when I dropped off of social media for a while, so I got rid of Facebook, Insta, and Twitter. It took my mom like 3 or 4 weeks. And what her response was, did you unfriend me? It wasn't, are you okay? It was, did you unfriend me? And I laughed with her about that. I'm like, it took you that long to notice that you were no longer getting my feed. And that in itself didn't trigger is everything okay? It triggered a ego-centered response of, did you pull me from your sandbox? And I laughed with her about it. And she's like, and my mom's like, she's not like hardcore ninja. It is a way for her to sort of reach out to family and friends. Like, she's a very kind of a 1.0 user of social media, right? She's just kind of figured out recently how to do direct messaging and that. She's always very click, like that's how she kind of works. But it is interesting, right? Like, what is it made me laugh. It made me laugh that someone who should be feeling it a little bit at a deeper level took her 4 weeks.
That's funny.
Yeah, it is kind of. 20 people, Roland. Knock your feed down to 20 people.
I'm not doing that. No, I'm going to be part of the 99% that doesn't do that. But are you gonna text me in 3 hours and ask me if I did it? Are you gonna send me an email in 2 days saying, hey, did you do it yet? No. You're going to let it go. You're going to let me float away, just like I've decided to do with, the people in my building. And my favorite, I remember years ago, I wanted to do a ministry project, and I wanted to get ministry funding. So I went to my principal, who had to sign off on it. And I remember telling him the idea and telling him that I would be collaborating with, so I was working in Cambridge. Yeah. And I was teaching primary, and I was going to connect with a teacher in Waterloo who teaches French to junior and intermediate students. And I said, this is the connection, this is the collaboration. I remember him saying to me, why aren't you doing this with somebody in our building? And I remember laughing, and I remember thinking to myself, and this is going to sound so bad. Let's see if I can filter some of the way I'm going to put this. I just looked at this individual and thought, like, dude, that's not how the world works anymore. And I know you'd love for me to do this with somebody in the building, but guess what? Nobody in the building's interested. Everybody in the building sees me as like, oh, there he is again with his idea. I'm like Doc Brown from Back to the Future. I've got all this garbage going on, and everybody's like, he's just the garbage man. He's just doing different things whenever. And then you find somebody who wants to do what you're doing, and you have a process where you can actually work with them. And I just remember, like, it was so 1.0, as you would say. well, why don't you just gather 3 or 4 people in this building and do it? And I'm like, because then I would be forcing someone to do something for a year and then end up doing it all by myself anyway. Whereas in this other situation, this 2.0 situation, I have someone who wants equal work time with me, who's got wonderful ideas that I don't buy into, but I'd love to see how they play out. And so you got 2 people willing to take that risk. And this has always been my thing. I end up doing Google Hangouts with educators around the province or wherever who want to do the same thing that I'm doing. And then people in the building, they're doing their own thing. And so it's that, is there value in me working with the person next door? There is, but not when they don't want to do what I'm doing and not when I don't want to do what they're doing. So how do you make that work? I don't know. Lately, I've been observing the grade 3 teachers that are next door to me. They work so well together. Like recesses, before school, after school, I see them standing in the hallway talking about their next move with whatever they're teaching at that moment in time. They are truly a collaborative grade partner team. And I've been observing it lately because I've been a little jealous that I don't have somebody in the building who wants to talk about the things I want to talk about. And that means that there are people in the building who feel the same way as I do, that there are people in the building that don't want to talk about what they're talking about. And it's rare. Again, I'm speaking from my experience in education. It's rare to find that person for me. And it's happened to me twice in my career, where I have felt really comfortable with my grade teaching partner, where we could literally do what you and I are doing right now. The back and forth, pulling the trigger on certain things, not pulling the trigger on certain things, doing things together, and then each one of us doing something within that framework that we have gifts like that we can bring to the table. It's only happened to me twice in 17 years where I've been able to function with someone that way. Other people are really easy. Like people they get dropped in a work environment and they can jump in or want to jump into whatever's happening. That's not the case with me. It's never been the case. And you know what this will blow your mind. People don't often come to me and ask me if I want to work with them. So
no, I'm totally on that. People
they don't come to me, but I'm expected to go to them and say, hey, you come and do this thing with me.
I've often wondered, so maybe here's another thing. Like so this is the other part. Like I don't know if people really like working with me. I'm going to say, and this is, I've actually, because I
feel the same way.
Despite the fact that they may think that I have value in things that I kind of do, I really and this builds a real deep appreciation. And I've said it before, I'll say it too, my deep appreciation of you, because I don't, just because I think I'm doing something interesting and because I become fascinated by it, there was maybe a time when I was younger that I had an expectation that someone would notice. And I have to be honest, I mean, every once in a while, I mean, that's the whole part of posting in public. You can only sort of say so long that you're just kind of existing there for no reason. I push stuff out into the out into the ether, somewhere believing in there that someone might find value in it. It doesn't drive my creativity. Like some of my poetry pieces, I don't really have a sense whether it's good or bad when I'm putting it out. I don't really accept if someone else tells me if it's good or bad, but I do appreciate when someone reaches back and kind of gives me a comment on something that I posted. I do, if someone kind of says, point and click and like, fine, that happens too. But I never assume that just because I'm doing something and I create it and I post it out, that the world is obligated to kind of give me the big thumbs up. So I really do appreciate when I can find spaces of connectivity like this. And my other colleagues and friends that I've built in my network, that I totally am sometimes mind blown that someone would even want to talk to me, like, and sort of like, because I tire myself sometimes, and I've had other people kind of say, like, Clef, you're just too much. You're too much. You're just, all of that is too much. And they'll kind of laugh and they'll smile and kind of walk away, and then we'll have it. And but what I will find is that the individuals that are willing to tell me that I'm too much are kind of the individuals that I'm pursuing for more. Like, I really appreciate that when they kind of push me back and they're like just stop for a second. And I'm like, okay. And then I kind of jump back in again. But back to, you know, what you're talking about, like, I don't know if people, I don't know if I believe that people actually enjoy working with me. Do you enjoy working with me?
I do.
Do you also at the same time though see what I'm talking about? Like, Clef, you're too much?
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay.
But
so there's the duality.
There's a rapport and there's a comfort level to say it's too much. Or I don't even need to say it. I'm like, that's awesome, go nuts.
You release me to it.
Well, you know the way I operate, and I kind of know the way you operate. You know, for as much as you can know in what we've given each other,
yes,
who we are, and I'm just not down with that anymore at work. I'm just not, and I truly feel like I'm expected in some weird way, and this is all in my head, to go and to bring people into what I'm up to, or to open myself up to them. But nobody's doing that to me. Nobody's coming to me and saying, hey, I got a great idea. You want to work on this? Nobody's doing that to me. So why am I doing that to others? And I don't know, man. Like, it's layered. Again, it's layered. If somebody comes to me and says, hey, I saw this or I heard about this, can you tell me more? I'm not going to say no and close my door. I'm going to be like, yeah, let's talk about this. And that kind of gets me excited. But then for me to expect them to jump into the next wave, which is, okay, let's bring our kids together and let's do this and let's take a look at this and let's take a look at that. And I'll give you a great example, another great example. Some people saw what I was doing with like some tech integration. They're like, tell me more. So I tell them more. And they're like, what's your plan? Like, what are you going to do next? So I tell them what I'm going to do next. And then I come home and I consider like some assessment and evaluation pieces of what I'm going to do next, because that's part of what we do, right? And I put something together and then I send it to those people. I say, okay, as part of what I'm going to do next, these are some things I'm considering. These are some things I'm looking for. These are some things I'm going to have my students reflect on. Crickets.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. So, okay. Ball's back in my court. What do? This is what I did. The next time I saw one of these two individuals, I brought it up in conversation. I said, hey, did you read my email? The response was, yeah, I read it. It was kind of hardcore. And I said, what was hardcore about it? Like, yeah, I could tell right away they were like hands off. So I was like, well, what about it threw you off? And they said, like, I don't really understand what this is about, and I don't understand how the kids would. So some valid questions about like an area that I feel that I have some fluency in that they don't, and that's fine, that's fair. So then I kind of gauge the conversation. Does this person want me to explain, or is this person saying politely in a code way, yeah, I'm not down with all that? So that's kind of the vibe I got. So before I left it, I just said, there's a lot of value in this next step. I'm just putting it out there. There's a lot of value. I'm gonna get some good feedback from this. I'm gonna learn what my students get, what they don't get, and where I need to move next. So this is a big next step for me as a teacher and for them as students. I'm gonna tell you that, and now I'm walking away. And I walked away. The other person, not a word, not a response. The other person is, I'm going to call them a ghoster. They're around here and there, and then they're gone. But I need to give some more insight into that. We're not friends. Like, I don't consider that person a friend. We're colleagues. We work in the same building, but we're not friends, and we're not even at a level where we can work together. So therefore, I believe I did the professional thing by sending it their way but I fully expected not to hear back from them. I did it so that I could say in my pea brain that I did the right thing, and now it's time for me to move on.
Yeah.
That, you know, so like, man, you cracked open a big one with the creativity collaboration thing. And, you know, people don't come knocking on my door and want to work with me. And so I do question, you know, like, is it really hard to work with me, or do they not like me? And it takes you back to elementary school.
Yeah,
and
can't it?
And I need to remember, this is why one of my biggest things is like, if I'm going to do what I'm going to do, I need to know why I'm doing it. And if I'm doing it for the reasons that will enable me to do it, then I'm doing it. And so it goes back to, okay, am I at work to be liked and to make friends? No, I'm not. So, you know,
But we're addressing more human side of this. That's what I got to throw in here. Like, it is a funny thing. Finish your thing. You started, sorry, even though, finish your thing, and then I'll jump in with
I'm taking it back to basics. Everybody wants to belong.
Yeah.
You know, even if they tell you that, no, come on, let's not BS this. Everybody wants to be liked. Everybody wants to belong. So there's that part there. But there's also the shade you throw over it, that you put it aside and you have to motor on. And so for me it's what am I doing? Why am I doing it? And you know, somebody said something yesterday to me that was profound, and I had never seen it this way. So I'm reserved at work, relatively speaking, and I think it throws people off when I connect with someone at work that I've known before I work where I work. Okay. And they're like, it's like three Rolands in the building, right? Like the reserved Roland, the really friendly, joking around Roland. I don't even know what the third one is, but I was told yesterday, I was in the workroom working, there was a teacher working, and I don't know how we got on this, but the teacher said to me, they said this to me, I think people view you as someone who's constantly judging others. And I said, what do you mean? And I'm literally sitting there like dumbfounded. What do you mean? And they're like, the way you come off is that you're constantly observing and judging. And I thought, I seriously was like, my first response was, you know, everybody's judging, right? I said, you know, I'm being judged all the time, right? Not to I wasn't trying to go head to head, blow for blow. I was just saying, you understand that no matter what I do,
yeah,
people are going to be like, whoa, what a loser, or whoa, that was really cool. It's happening all the time. And therefore, there's nothing. That's why, again, you got to know what you're doing and why you're doing it. And then you either do it or you don't. But you have to know those pieces.
Yeah.
So I looked at her and I was like, oh, I didn't dig deeper. But what I'm going to infer is that she's had this conversation with other people who may have said, yeah, I don't get that dude. I feel like he's constantly observing me and judging what I'm doing, what I'm saying. Now, to be honest with like you, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm more thinking like, oh, those people are having a conversation over there. I have nothing to offer, so I'm not going to go over there. Or, oh, you know, like, so my whole staff room thing has gone kaput. I don't go in the staff. I haven't been in the staff room in ages. I don't go in the staff room. And there's probably like some layers there, but ever since my kind of staff room talk and wanting to experiment, I've not been in the staff room. But that's not true. I'll go in on Thursdays and I'll grab a couple of snacks because it's Thursday snack day. But I just kind of say hi to people, get what I need and go. Yeah. I don't go in there at prime times. And I can't bring myself to do it. I don't want to go in there. But it's just interesting that from my perspective, I'm trying to stay out of stuff, right? I'm disengaged that way, which is maybe why people won't come talk to me, but it certainly didn't start that way. So I don't know why I feel I'm expected to be knocking on doors. And now with the whole judgment piece that I have in my back pocket, I can understand people probably, if I come to their door, they're probably like, oh, is he here to tell me I'm not doing something right? Or, which is not the case at all. I don't tell anybody what to do or how to do it. I just try to offer them some value with some experience that I have. And I feel like they don't want it. So I'm not knocking.
I think it might have been August or September episode. You and I talked about what it was like kind of transitioning into new schools and how some of your old tools work, some of your old tools don't work, how when you're sort of pulled out of your familiar contexts, I'd say if you're paying attention, like, right, and you're sort of tracking your thinking and tracking the growth, like, of relationships, that's a good thing, no matter how uncomfortable it is. And I think when I came to my new school, I recognized that, like, I'd kind of been in an elongated transition. My first school that I was there for over a decade. And then my next stop was like a 2-year landing point. It's funny, I've recognized in my brain, and I've had to sort of push against this, is that quick step transitions can actually feed next quick step transitions. I actually had a moment. I've had a couple moments this semester where I thought, I'm gonna look and see what's available on the transfer list. And then I kind of shake my head. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, is that real? Like, are you really interested in leaving the school already? And why is that? Like, what is it? What's making that thought come into your head? Is it a real thought, or you're just kind of like window shopping? There's no real intent to buy, but you're just sort of like, it's kind of like a hobby. And that's kind of pushed me into a place of working harder. That's a bad word. I'll try and qualify it, but being more mindful of building relationships. And I don't know if I think I've let that happen automatically a lot in the past. Like, I think I've just allowed relationships to come to me and sort of looked at that list and then kind of used similar tools like whatever, connectivity, friendliness, sharing, conversation, all the sort of stuff that you would use in sort of building friendships. But I don't think I was as intentional as I'm starting to be. And there's individuals that I've met now at my new school that I'm allowing myself to think I'd kind of like to be their friend. Like, I'm honestly having these thoughts, and it's quite, like, that's new thinking for me. In the past, friends are the people that just happen to be around you, and you do your best to kind of make those connections. But I guess the reason I'm mentioning this is that I've changed my own kind of, I've changed. It's not completely changed, but it's starting to change my perception of being at work, at that it's not just one note as work. It actually has a viable social element to it. It's not just about where I'm there to produce things and help the kids and follow ministry guidelines. Like, it's not just that. And that's a new place of thinking for me. And part of that process is being lensed through, when I mentioned before, joining these committees. So I'm putting myself into spaces where I'm meeting individuals that in the past I wouldn't have naturally come across. And, in high school, I don't know if this happens as much as elementary, but you will see clustering, like sort of like the math teachers are kind of hanging together and the science teachers kind of hang together. That is a thing. And the social circles that emerge from that are then sort of siloed by that kind of specific area of interest. But I've had to admit to myself recently that I do crave and this is the human part, I do crave the friendships that are not just laid before me, but I crave friendships that I feel like I'm actively investing in. And it seems so almost like cold for me to sort of recognize that. But I think a lot in the past, the people that I got to know were by default the people that were just around me. And I didn't always pursue a little bit more of a personal connection when the professional kind of framework wasn't there. So this has kind of started to tweak, re-energize how I'm looking at my work context. And one small change is like, I've just had to tell myself, like, stop looking at the transfer list. Like what you're doing, you're not going to find, you haven't maximized your connectivity in the place that you've landed at. So stop doing that. Stop doing that. Stop thinking that you're going to find the thing over there. See if you go deep here, see what happens. And I'm starting to find some real richness there. Like for better, for worse, there are people that are sort of trusting me and entrusting me with things that I'm thinking to myself, like, whoa, like I to that point, like, really, you want to tell me this thing? You want to sort of share this thing, like life stuff and bigger picture stuff that happens away from the classroom. But I'm conflicted because I'm not quite that person yet. So I don't know if I'm coming off as artificial, too much, but in a different direction.
This podcast took a turn that I didn't think it was going to go down. Like, I didn't know. Oh, well.
Yeah. No, it's you imagine if we had a guest? Them sitting in and just listening. Like where there's not a lot of I don't know. We have a lot. It's like the Autobahn, eh? My brother-in-law was him and his family are they're on a trip right now in Europe, and he was on the Autobahn, and he at one point when he's on the Autobahn, he I think maybe it wasn't on the Autobahn. Maybe I'm just making it more energized than it is, but he was on a highway with a self-driving car, a Volvo, that will. Now I want to make it on the Autobahn because somehow that just totally boosts the whole thing. But I think he mentioned he got a Volvo up to 245 kilometers an hour or something. Like,
wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't even imagine that. But what it makes me think about is like, oh, there goes my exit. And then trying to get over into the lane to the exit. That's why I wonder if someone were on our podcast, if that's what it'd feel like it was for them. They're like, oh crap. That was my point of entry into the conversation. I think you and I shift well, but I think it's entirely a dance that you and I have figured out.
Oh yeah. There's some fluency here, right?
Yeah.
Well, what do you say? My brain's kind of
we ready to escape?
The only thing my brain that's holding my brain from leaking out of my ears are these headphones.
Nice compression. It's like compression socks for your head.
It's a good one.
Yeah. That's the thing. That actually kind of it's underarm. It's over armor.
Over armor.
Over armor.
Okay, dude. Well, we both survived the first week back from March break.
That's it. It was so long ago, wasn't it?
It feels like forever. I have to tell you though, my kids were really amazing this week in terms of like coming back into the fold.
Yeah.
My students did a great job. Really happy to get back to work. I think I don't know if I mentioned this in one of the episodes, but on the last day before March break, I had some of my students tell me they really didn't want to be away for a week. Mm-hmm. And it's just due to sheer boredom. Like, at school, they're engaged. Like they got things to do, whether they like it or not, they've got things to do. It's fun. And so at home, I don't think, they don't have access to the tech. They don't have access to like the crayons, the books, the pencils, the people, right? To like do stuff and make things happen. And they don't have access to the culture of the school because when you're in the building, it's a culture, right? You feel a certain way and you operate a certain way. And when you can't have any of that, it can suck for people. So I'm glad when, Monday morning, kids had smiles on their faces. They were generally happy to be back.
Yeah.
And, as hard as it was for me to wake up early again and go to work, there's nothing better than having a group of kids that are like interested in seeing you and being there with you. So that was cool. But yeah, like the week went well in the classroom, but I'm glad it's over because I needed a reset. And here we are today resetting.
Yeah, I would agree. My kids were cool too. They came back with a lot of stuff that they needed help unwinding, but it's sometimes in that unwinding that you land, right? Like you sort of, you're maybe someone might even go so far as to say your purpose is reignited. Like that's, whether it could be the lesson, it could be the learning, it could be just the relationship. So I had some nice moments of that as well.
Nice. Okay, well, have a great week at work, and
you too, man.
I'm sure you and I will be going back and forth. I had a lot of interesting ideas this week. I captured some of my student learning this week, and it was, I talked to them about some of the creative things I wanted to do with that. They were really cool. So I'm looking forward to working on that this weekend.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff, man. Take some fun time too.
Yeah, for sure. You too.
Take care.
See ya.